Hi there, lovely Booktube. It's Roz, and it's Tuesday, and Tuesday means it's Tag Day. And I'm working at the moment, but obviously I'm not because I'm recording this. I'm taking a little belated lunch break to do a tag so that I don't miss Tag Tuesday, because that would be a shame. Because at the moment I'm enjoying Jim of Jim's Books and Stuff's alphabet tagging, and I did A to J, and I'm going to carry on today from K onwards. So, with no more ado, let's get stuck in. K is for king, says Jim. What's your favourite book about royalty, real or fictional? Well, the book I chose when I thought about it was one by a 20th century Scottish British mystery writer, Josephine Tay, and she wrote a book called Daughter of Time, and came out in 1951, so it's like middle of the 20th century. And it is kind of a crime detective novel. It's got her kind of favourite detective character that she writes about in it. But this story is different because it's also kind of quite a real, fairly serious, I guess, look at whether King Richard III was as bad as he was made out by Shakespeare and others. Was that all Tudor propaganda? And did he really kill the princess in the tower? So if you enjoy a well-written mystery and you've got an interest in English history, it's one for you. L is for librarian. Who is your favourite librarian? Well, I can't believe that no one else has mentioned this yet, but my favourite real-life librarian is Jen the Librarian, who has a Booktube channel, which is really very good, and I'll link to it below. My fictional favourite librarian is Malachi of Hildesheim in Umberto Eco's Name of the Rose. There you go. And Malachi the Librarian is this kind of rather sinister figure, but he actually winds up really seeming quite sad, I suppose. Anyway, the library is key to this book. If you yeah, an interesting one if you haven't read it, but I suppose most of you have. M is for magazine, and Jim asked, "Do you have any magazine subscriptions or a favourite magazine?" Now, this is a slightly touchy subject in my house. Okay, no, I don't have a magazine subscription, and I don't read many magazines, but Steve, my dearly, dearly beloved husband, has a bit of a magazine habit. Yeah, it goes with his record buying habit. But, don't tell him that I mentioned it in these negative terms. But, yeah, unnecessary numbers of magazines come into this house. I sometimes read the New Statesman, which is one of the ones he subscribes to, just the pages at the back that have the book reviews. And every now and then he'll buy a copy of the London Review of Books as a sop to me to make me think that magazines are a good idea. There you go. Don't tell him. Don't tell him I grumbled. He's so good in other ways. N is for news. So, Jim asks, where do you usually find your news? And two places like the liberal-minded Englishwoman that I am. It's the BBC Radio 4 news coverage that I listen to in the background, like in the mornings as I'm getting up, and the Guardian newspaper, online in the week and in paper at the weekends. And although I do find news, in other places, those are the two sources that I trust. Or maybe those are the two sources where I feel like I know what their biases are well enough that I'm confident about them. Yeah, do you know what I mean? No news comes kind of like, no news is just fact, is it? It never is. You always have to read it with care and thought and your own sort of discrimination. Problem number 5, O. O is for fiddlesticks. Is that what you meant, Jim? I hope so. Yeah. He says this is make your own choice for O, and I'm going to pick Oman, the country of Oman, because of the book Celestial Bodies by Joka Al-Kathi, which was the the first Arabic language book to win the Booker International Prize. It was just slightly disappointing as a book for me. In that I really, when you have those books and there's lots about them that's really good, but you want to love them even more than you do. There was she kind of spent too long with the less interesting male character for me, and it was a bit disjointed. Having said that, there were things about it that made it a like definitely a 4-star read, if that makes sense, and I would still recommend it. If you've read it, do feel free to comment and tell me if I'm being fair in having sort of giving it a slightly mixed review, as it were. But yeah, how many books can you find from a man to read in English? So let's not grumble overly much. P is for penguin and publisher. So Jim says, what's your favourite publisher? Well, Penguin would be one. Penguin Classics are a joy to me, and I grew up with penguins and puffins and pelicans that are all part of one thing. But to think of a more current favourite publisher for me, Fitzcarraldo, I particularly enjoyed it. Some of my favourite recent books have come out from Fitzcarraldo. I like their list, if that makes sense. Oh, and a little indie one would be Blue Moose from Hebden Bridge. There you go. Q is for queer. Your favourite LGBTQI+ author. And now there are so many, so it's hard to pick one. But the one I'm going to pick is Sylvia Townsend Warner, and she's one of those 20th century English women writers or British women writers that I particularly enjoy. It's a period that I love, and kind of that I feel are sometimes undervalued, as it were. And she lived, now when was she born? Hang on, I wrote it down. 1893. She lived from 1893 to 1978. So she was almost exactly contemporary with my grandmother. And but had probably a rather more interesting life. And I particularly enjoy her books, Lolly Willows, the other one that weirdly I always get the name of right, because I always want to call it The Things They Carried, and that's wrong. I'll put the right name. It's one about nuns. Great book about nuns. I'll medieval nuns. I'll put it in the show notes because it's gone out of my head. Shows I should just write everything down, doesn't it? Brain. It's partly because my brain's been in work all morning and not in books. Number 8, R is for Russia. Oh, now there's another really unreasonable question, Jim, like your favourite LGBTQI author, because this is a favourite novel, poem or writer from Russian literature. So look, the whole of Russian literature, Jim, and I'm supposed to pick just one? It's an outrage. Usually, if you ask me my favourite, I'm going to stick just with novels, just to cut it down a bit. If you were to say, pick your favourite Russian novel, I would normally say Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. That's the easy answer. And it is probably my favourite, I think. If you asked for my favourite 20th century Russian novelist rather than classic, I would be torn between two, and I'd probably fluctuate between whether I was feeling kind of in tune with the gritty realism of Grossman's Life and Fate, Vasily Grossman. Amazing book. One for March of the Mammoths, maybe. If you haven't read it before, what a stunner. Or if I'm feeling a bit more kind of like alternative, then it would be Mikhail Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita, which is also an amazing book, but seriously weird. You have been warned. The cat in it is particularly satisfying. But how about a 21st century Russian book to recommend, Ros? Come on. Laurus. Laurus came out in 2012, I think, and it's by Eugene Vodolazkin. Oh, God, terrible. And it's a book about a medieval Russian monk and holy fool. And if you like the kind of, well, the kind of novel that is on the literary end of historical fiction, um, and a bit on the odd side, and I do like things that are on the odd side, like Till, Tyll, by Daniel Kelman, that was one of my favourite books last year. Laris is in that same ilk, perhaps. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good one. Well, that was R's for Russia. Got carried away there, didn't I? S is for science fiction. Your favourite sci-fi read? Well, now some people would say this was equally tricky. I'm not such a huge science fiction reader, but I will pick a favourite science fiction writer, and that is Ursula Le Guin. Now, actually, the book that I picked off the shelf here is her Ursula Quartet, which is more fantasy than science fiction, I suppose, but The Dispossessed, or The Left Hand of Darkness, is the kind of science fiction that I suppose it you know, the kind of science fiction that is also about exploring our world through ideas set in another world. That was a terrible way of explaining that, but I think science fiction readers will understand what I mean. I like that, where, you know, she looks at sort of issues around sort of gender, say, through science fiction, but still writes a really well plotted, interesting book with convincing world building and all of that. It's not worthy ideas based book, enjoyable books. Yeah, that's actually Le Guin. Number 10, T is for trope, tag, or more. Your prompt for T. Okay, tags. I'm going with T for tags. And why? Why do we do tags on Booktube? And some people don't, I know, and some people think they're repetitive and boring, but actually it's something that I've really warmed to since in my first sort of year and a bit of Booktube. 3 reasons. One is it's part of our kind of community building. You know, we interconnect by tagging each other and maybe all doing the same tag around the same time period and seeing each other's like, yeah, community. Reason number 2 is that they're often an opportunity to talk about kind of bookish related topics or your history as a reader, and you know, so I like that, and I like hearing that from other people. And reason number 3 is because with a tag you often get to talk about books that aren't the things that you're currently reading or planning to read, or you've just bought or whatever. You know, they're more reflective, I suppose. So I like that. There you go. U is for unicorn. Oh, and you have to look at Jim's Unicorn Mimosa, who features in his version of this tag. Oh, I should say he did it in 2 bits. But I'm going all the way, all the way from K to Z in one go. Okay, so what is my favourite? My favourite mythical creature, mythical beast. Number 1 is the scaly dandelion. Haven't you heard of scaly dandelions? It's a kind of snake plant hybrid. Apparently, scaly dandelion is what scally dandling about the books turns into in the subtitles. That's what YouTube thinks my channel is called, Scaly Dandelion, about the books. Great. So Scaly Dandelion is now my new mythical creature. But and Jim told me that. Thank you, Jim. But my real favourite mythical creature is the centaur, and one specific centaur, which is Karen. And Karen is just such a noble and yes, rather inspiring mythical creature who turns up quite a bit. So obviously he's in Greek mythology. That's where, you know, Ovid mentions him as well. He was known for being the tutor, kind of like he's like a teacher creature. Yeah. So he taught Odysseus and Theseus and Jason and Peleus and Perseus and Achilles, and yeah. Take a famous Greek hero, and you're gonna find out that Karen has something to do with his education, and that means he's turned up. It turns up in other books too, like Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. He's like a great character in that, and I was reminded about him just the other day because he also features in Inferno, Dante's Inferno, which I'm reading with the help of Tom of LA Books. So, yeah, he's my favourite. Question number 12. V is for Violet. And Jim asks us to find our favourite violet-coloured book. I have to say, I don't have a lot of violet-coloured books in my house, but I did find one. I found a couple, and this one is my favourite. And this is Picks and Martyrs by Arthur Ransom. It's in his Swallows and Amazon series, so they're children's books. These were such favourite books of mine as a child, that, and of Steve's too, as it happens, that we actually got a set of the kind of original reprints of the original style hard book editions, because we would actually, it's not many times that I want a book just to sort of have the object, because it's meaningful to me, and Steve remembers getting all of these out of his local library, one after the other, and reading them all. And I had, whereas I had penguin paperback versions, puffin paperback versions of them at home. Lucky me. But yeah, Picks and Martyrs, one of my favourites in the series. Now, W. W is for why. Why did you start your Booktube channel? Asked Jim. Or if you haven't got one, why don't you? He says. Well, perhaps because you don't want to, and that's okay. Why did I start mine? Blame Tilly. Tilly of Tilly's Shelf is actually my daughter, and she just drew me in by showing me things like Jane Austen July and Victober, and yeah, it got me to join in on videos with her, and in the end I thought, yeah, actually, hang on a minute, I really like talking about books. A Booktube channel is just what I need. So there we go. Number 19. X is for Xenocide. What novel featuring Xenocide are you interested in, if any? Now, books about Xenocide is not the same thing as books about genocide. So Xenocide is the killing of strangers. But to be honest, when I came to answering this, it really got me thinking, I suppose, about books about genocide rather than Xenocide, because one of the things that happens in genocide is that it's very often the killing of neighbours, in effect, but they are reframed in people's minds as strangers, as the other, as alien, and that's one of the horrific elements of genocide. And a book that really I read recently that kind of really brought that home to me was Weep Not Refugee by Marie-Thérèse Toyi, and she's a writer from Burundi, and she was writing about refugees from Burundi who had fled from sort of a genocidal civil war. And Burundi is one of those unlucky places where the Hutu and Tutsi kind of conflict has at times erupted, and sometimes the genocide has been of Tutsis against Hutus, and sometimes it's Hutus against Tutsis, but they are neighbours, not strangers. And yeah, too sad, really. Yeah. So let's move on to something more cheerful, which is why. Why is for YouTube. Apart from Booktube, what YouTube channels do you watch? Not a lot. Mostly I only watch Booktube channels. I watch YouTube videos to find out how to do things like prune my blackcurrant bushes, or bake bread. So yeah, Babish, he has a good channel for looking up how to do, particular recipes, say. But apart from that, I'm not a huge YouTube watcher. One exception is that Tilly's husband has a YouTube channel of him doing extraordinary stunts on a trial bike, which I watch with a sort of avid but slightly horrified kind of, is he going to kill himself? And what will that mean for Tilly? Sort of look. Well, not kill himself, just damage himself. He just wear a helmet. There you go. And finally, question number Z. Z is for zero. Your favourite book about nothing. And Jim picked Stoner, and that was a good choice. I'm going to pick a wonderful book about everything and nothing, which is Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskill, which I'm reading at the moment with a few other lovely booktubers, the Cranford women, as we're calling ourselves now. And it's a book almost without a plot, like from the sort of set in the sort of 1820s, I suppose, in this small village where nothing happens, except that it's just totally engrossing. There you go. So that's all the lovely prompts. Thank you, Jim. They're great. Go and have a look at Jim's originals. There's 3 videos, but I've done it in 2. Who am I going to tag? Well, anyone I tagged for A to J, consider yourself tagged for this too. I'm sure you will. There's a few people who commented on my A to J tag that I'm going to tag now. Who some of them are relatively new booktubers. So there's the MMs. Mary Margaret of MM's Musings and Marilyn Meyer Mendoza. And I think both of them have only ever done the Booktube newbie tag as tags. So why not do A to Z in whatever combination you like, Marilyn and Mary. Another booktube who's not so much new, but she's just kind of restarting doing videos is Christina of Knitting Books, etc. And I don't think she's ever done a tag. So, Christina, give it a shot. Why not? Then there's the K's, Katja Weinert and Katrina Reeds, who both have both do tags and have great channels that don't have as many subscribers as they should have, in my opinion. So I'll link to them down below. And Katja and Katrina, why not do this one? And then just 2 more. Emily of Novel Novels and Tori of Hufflepuff Discovery. I don't think either of you have got onto this alphabet tag train, and if you did, you'd probably tag each other, but I'll tag you both right now. And happy week, everybody.